It is time to build a new website. So you're ready. You're ready to get going. You're ready to select a web developer. You're ready to start your interviewing process. So today we're going to talk about questions that you should ask. So, there are some obvious questions that are like super straightforward. And of course, you're going to ask them. How much does a website cost? Or what is your approach, et cetera, et cetera. Those are, I think, pretty obvious questions. Um, Today, my colleague Laura and I are going to talk about some sort of more in depth questions that we think are going to help you make a better, more informed decision when you're picking your web development company. So, my name is Erica Dickstein, and I'm with Spring Insight Marketing.
And I'm Laura Mayer, also with Spring Insight.
So, the first question that we're going to go over is why are you excited about my particular project? And I'm going to start out with this one. Sometimes when you ask questions, you're not really trying to get the answer to the question. You're really just trying to understand how they're going to answer your question. And I think this is one of those questions. What you really want to understand with this question, it's not even so much why they're really interested, it's how they're thinking about your project. Are they thinking about you as just another law firm, or do they really understand who you are and are giving you an answer that is based on sort of who you feel you are? Um, and I would say also, secondarily in this question, you actually want to understand, are you excited about my project? You, is this something that you are, I know speaking for myself and Laura, I'm imagining this is the case for you as well. There are projects that I'm just genuinely excited about that really seem like fun, that or sound like something I really want to dive my teeth into. And then there are others that, I'm not putting on as brave of a face.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would, also say it gives the the person looking for the web dev team a little insight into who you're working with and how they're going to value you, right? How they're going to value your feedback
Hmm?
and interact with you throughout the project. It's a very intimate process, actually, and it's can be very vulnerable for the client too because it exposes a lot of things they don't know or don't understand well. Maybe they're sensitive about not understanding those well too. So I think that is an important question to ask.
So, question number two, how will you keep me accountable to make sure this project stays on time? So, here's the thing about this question. Something that we know, and that now you will know, although you may or may not believe, is that when a web development project goes off schedule, goes off kilter, 99% of the time, that happens on the client side. When you have a well run web development, web strategy firm, we know what we're doing. We've done this a bazillion times before, whereas the client hasn't, right? This is exceptional for the client. It's not exceptional for us. And so for us, we have a process. We're going to keep ourselves on schedule. But for the client, they're the ones, maybe they're producing content or they're getting approvals or whatever it is that's happening on their side is something that's a bit more unusual. So what you're really asking the team is, how are you going to make sure that I know when my deadlines are, that I'm tracking to my deadlines, and so that I'm avoiding what happens, which is what you don't want, which is at the end you all of a sudden you're like, well, where's my website? And the development team says, what are you talking about? You needed to finish this and this and this, and we're running weeks and weeks late because you haven't gotten it right. So what you're wanting to understand is, how are they keeping you accountable? So Laura, as a project manager, tell us some examples of how you do this and how we do it at Spring Insight.
Yeah, so I think that's where we really get into the nuts and bolts and where it's very beneficial to have a technical project manager uh, involved in the process. Uh, what you want to ask as someone looking for a web dev team, how the project is going to be managed, is that they meet you in the communication channels that you can best understand. Now, for some people, it might be everyone gets a weekly email update status, right? And for us, we share a collaborated timeline. We review it every single week. We have identified any risks in the beginning. We add any that come up. We have mitigation plans in place. We have a communication plan We have everyone's information available. So it's really, it's the unshiny stuff, right? But it's the nuts and bolts, it's the measuring and the checking that's going to get your project done. And we're good at that,
Oh,
right?
the
We've done it a
unshiny
lot.
stuff.
Yeah, the unshiny stuff we take care of so that the shiny
Mm,
stuff can be shiny, right?
right. So it
Yeah.
gives the shiny stuff the ability to
The
breathe.
wind beneath its wings.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly right. But that's really what the client wants to ask. Are they going to communicate the information that you need to know as the client in a channel, in a manner that you can understand and ingest and respond to? And how frequently will they give you
Hmm.
that information?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. To give you the wind beneath your wings to make sure that you finish the work in time to make sure that nothing gets delayed. Okay, so question three. Can you tell me about a time a project went off the rails? So speaking as from the agency side, it's kind of a question you don't want to get. You don't want to talk about a time where something has gone awry,
It's
but
never happened.
just like, yeah, exactly.
Never.
And yet it does. And yet it does, right? So
Yeah.
all of us have had something go off the rails. And so really here, what you're trying to understand is from the web development team, when something does go wrong, how do you manage it? How do you mitigate it? You how do you save the project? So Laura, like what are some examples that you can think of that sort of fall into this category for us?
Well, first off, you never know. You can have the best laid plans and things that have nothing to do with, or you have no control over, will come and affect the plan. Political environments change, and that can change the direction of a project very quickly, especially in the government contracting space, and other situations like that. Shifts in leadership, shifts in laws. These are all things that ideally at the beginning of the project you have identified all risk and you have developed mitigation measures, but that's really what you want to have that conversation with when you're looking for a web dev team. Is you want to hear, are they using those words risks, are they using those words mitigations, do they build in buffers, do they say stuff like that? So what you want to know is the unexpected is going to happen, but do you have a process for handling it if and when it does?
Awesome. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
want to tell us about question four?
Well, I do because, again, back to the nuts and bolts stuff, what you absolutely positively want to know is, are all websites that your firm creates ADA compliant? So we've talked about the DOJ ruling, the WCAG 2.1 AA. We've had a couple webinars or videos like this, and you've had some blogs and whatnot. What do you think, Erica?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I say. I think I've said it in a couple of different modalities is that there was a time back, 2014, 2015, where if your site wasn't built in responsive, it was okay. But then in 2015, like you should be embarrassed if your site wasn't built to be compliant. And that same thing has really happened now. If you're building a new site, it has to be compliant. And so what you're really listening, I'm actually going to go a step further and say, I'm actually kind of hoping you don't have to ask this question because they've threaded in their conversation ADA or WCAG compliance.
Right, it's
They've sort of
telling you
let
with
you
that.
know.
Right, for sure.
Exactly. They've let you know that they know what they're doing. And so that's even more ideal is that you know that this is something that is like with us, that we're going to think about whether or not they discuss it with you.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of, what you see on a website. It can be very pretty and amazing and gorgeous and not have that stuff in the back end that you need for search engine optimization, that you need for WCAG compliance, a lot of these sorts of measures. So you really want to find a web development firm that gives you the whole package, a beautiful, gorgeous website, but also has those elements baked into the back end for the stuff that the regular user doesn't really think or know about.
Yep, absolutely.
With that compliance.
Okay.
But we have one more question, which is kind of in the technical realm
Hmm.
too, which is very important, is what, if any, CMS, content management system, will you be building in? And we know this is important for a bunch of different reasons, but do you want to start that one off, Erica?
Sure. So, we're a WordPress shop, and as a WordPress shop, we're always going to have a bias towards WordPress. But putting that aside, what I would say is whether or not you're building in WordPress, what you really should be thinking about is can you find somebody very easily who, if for whatever reason, the team that you're working with is no longer the team you want to be working with or is available to you, will you be able to easily replace them? And that is best done with open source. It is absolutely best done. Open source is where you have sort of a lot of different developers as opposed to, I'm forgetting the word, as opposed to a proprietary system where you are not able to necessarily move this easily. Squarespace is an example. It's a great solution. For the right client, Squarespace is fantastic. But one thing we know about Squarespace, you're not just able to port your site over to someone else. So that's, I think, that's the way I think about it.
I think about it too in terms of the CMS determines the complexity and expense of maintaining and updating the website in the future and overall. So, what's great about WordPress is if you're a company that's able, or an organization that's able to handle your web edits and your plugin updates and backups like that, you're able to do that yourself through an open source CMS backend in a less complicated manner than if it were something proprietary. So for plugin updates and content changes, image changes, things like that, adding posts, adding blogs, you definitely want to think about the expense of what you want to do in the future, maintaining and moving the site forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with all of that, we will finish off by saying these are great questions for you to ask whatever web development team or web strategy team you're talking to. And if you are looking for a web strategy team that you want to talk to, who could you find that would be better than to work with than Laura and myself?
Right.
I can't even imagine. So we hope you'll come to our website, springinsight.com. It's down in the description, and set up a time for a web analysis where I'm happy to talk to you about your website and we can talk about your project. You can ask me some of these questions.